So, hello everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. Uh, I will start introducing myself. My name is Leandro Toneto. I am an associate professor at the Georgia Institute of Technology in the US, in the School of Industrial Design. And I also want to introduce Sarah Harris. She's been working with us to put together this event and other events that will follow. So, yeah, there you see her. A lot of hard work. And I want to also say thanks to my school, who's been supporting uh, SIGWELL, especially allowing us to have someone like Sarah working with us and putting together events like this. So thanks everyone. And also thanks to our presenters. We'll introduce them in a few minutes. So yeah. First, I just want to say a quick word about SIGWELL. SIGWELL is the special interest group in design for well-being, happiness, and health within the Design Research Society. So our group focuses on advancing design research to enhance individuals' the individual well-being of people and, of course, society across products, services, systems, and environments. So this means that we span design disciplines like industrial design or architecture. So SIGWELL organizes special tracks in the Design Research Society international conferences. We are very happy because in our last conference in Boston in June 2024, we had a record of 70 papers submitted, 21 accepted contributions. So it's a milestone for us. Before COVID, we used to have fewer submissions, and since then we've attracted more and more work on this topic. So this very first online seminars celebrating this important milestone for us with two of the top presentations that we had at DRS. So we had a lot of insights, interesting insights from the 21 DRS papers that were presented. And I would say that a few of them relate to the topic of this seminar. Probably the most interesting one that is represented by these three presentations is how everyday life can be improved through design. So a few years ago, we had submissions around subjective well-being, almost 100% focused on healthcare. And healthcare is important for us, but exploring ways to design to improve daily life is such a joy. So thank you for your interest in this topic. So the DRS 2024 and these presentations, they reflect our growth, SIGWELL growth, embracing more multidisciplinary approaches, leveraging technology, and also exploring innovative solutions for diverse populations, like you will see soon. So I'll do like a very quick presentation of our three presenters and their work. And then just before they start their presentations, I'll present them in a little bit more detail. So the first presentation is Daily Doses of Wellbeing, How Everyday Technology Can Support Positive Activities. And Lisa VS from Delft University of Technology will deliver this presentation. We'll have another two presentations following Lisa. The second is Tinder, I Don't Like This, Identifying Desired User Interaction Qualities to Support Intimacy Building in the Online Environment. And Petra Salaric from Loughborough University is making this presentation. And our third presentation is connecting sustainable and well-being enhancing behaviors, reflections through daily practices of young adults. And we have Michael Kowalski from Syracuse University and Cornell University to deliver this presentation. And we also have online Michael's advisor, Yoon from Cornell. So welcome everyone. We are moving on to our first presentation. Great. So Lisa is a PhD candidate at the Delft Institute of Positive Design. Her research focuses on how everyday technologies such as online shops, social networks can be designed and redesigned so they foster sustained well-being. So thank you, Lisa, for being with us. Please feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thanks for the introduction, Leandro. I'm happy to be here and to present work that my colleagues Anna Pohlmeier, Paul Heckert, and me have done on how consumer technology can support positive activities and ultimately sustained well-being, as Leandro just said. And in our research, we focus on consumer technology such as messaging services and social networking platforms because they are so deeply ingrained into our everyday lives. And we believe that this creates the opportunity to impact people's quality of life and their well-being on a broad scale through the design of consumer technology. Tech companies like Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, and YouTube appeal to this potential of consumer technology to support well-being in their mission statements. YouTube wants to give everyone a voice. Facebook promises to bring the world closer together. Instagram encourages users to express themselves, and Pinterest aspires to help people create a life they love. Despite this potential for good and maybe also some good intentions, the same technology can also cause significant harm to people's well-being, such as distraction, polarization, mental health problems, and cyberbullying. This is related to the business metrics of the attention economy that demand to maximize engagement and to increase time spent on these platforms. Increased public awareness, for instance, through the widely watched Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, has put pressure on IT companies to fix this and take responsibility for users' well-being. This has catapulted well-being on the roadmaps of some of the major IT companies, leading their CEOs like Mark Zuckerberg to release statements like this. We feel a responsibility to make sure our services aren't just fun to use, but also good for people's well-being. So far, the focus of well-being initiatives in the tech industry have focused on reducing or preventing harm that is caused by these digital technologies in the first place. Here you see digital well-being features, or some of them released by Google, and you can find these features in the settings menu of every Android phone, and they help users to monitor screen time, reduce distractions, and schedule times to unplug. However, we believe that we should not only fight or reduce the negative, because this will make technology not problematic at best. We believe that we can design consumer technology to also actively enhance the positive. So how do we do that in our work? One promising starting point are positive activities or positive psychology interventions. And these are intentional activities that aim at cultivating positive feelings, behaviors, or cognitions. Typical examples you can see here on the screen include practicing gratitude, cultivating optimism, or nurturing social relationships. These are scientifically proven strategies to enhance people's well-being longer term. For us, positive activities are a promising design target for well-being design because they are tangible and rather short-term predictors of long-term well-being outcomes. In previous work, we have developed a theoretical framework that describes how positive activities or how digital technology can promote positive activities and ultimately sustained well-being in 5 steps. The main steps in the framework are highlighted in gray, and positive activities are in the center in stage 3, and the framework then describes how in stage 1, digital technology can promote positive activities in stage 3 and sustained well-being in stage 5. At the core of the framework is a set of 14 positive activities that can be targeted by design and a set of design mechanisms in pillar 1. We have specified 16 design mechanisms that can support these positive activities. Those design mechanisms represent specific strategies to stimulate psychological drivers of behavior, which is then the second pillar. So a person's capability, motivation, and opportunity to engage in these positive activities. These mechanisms represent mostly common behavior change techniques, such as social support, prompts, or feedback. In our work, we focus on the first 3 stages of the framework, so we're interested in how digital technology and specifically certain design mechanisms can support drivers of behavior and ultimately positive activities. Design for well-being and also design for positive activities can take 2 approaches in general, which you're probably familiar with. So on the one hand, we have dedicated designs that comprise technologies that are deliberately built to promote well-being, determinants, in our case, positive activities as their core function. And examples are behavioral intervention technologies such as meditation apps or gratitude journals. On the other hand, we have active designs. Those technologies, including consumer technologies, are not purpose-built to support well-being, but they do include certain features or aspects that target well-being, and in our case, positive activities. An example is Facebook's Memories feature that supports the positive activity of savoring, and Spotify's Browse by Mood feature, through which users can select music based on their current or desired mood, potentially supporting emotion regulation. In our work, we focus on active designs and consumer technology. And we ask the question, how can design support positive activities integrated into these consumer technologies? To explore this question, we conducted a case study embedded into an interaction design master's course at TU Delft. And in this course, students were briefed to deliberately design for positive activities in the context of consumer technology. 14 design students participated in this course that comprised 10 sessions of 4 hours. Throughout the course, we observed how students targeted or approached the task to design for positive activities, which challenges they faced, and how they used the theoretical framework. In addition, we analyzed the final design concepts regarding which strategies students employed and which design mechanisms, those that were specified in the framework, they employed to support positive activities. The course was explicitly centered on the theoretical framework, and we wanted to understand how students translate this theoretical framework into concrete design concepts. For the course, we focused on 7 of those 14 positive activities, which you can see highlighted here. And the specific task in the course was to select one of these activities for each student and to redesign existing consumer technology to also target this activity. Students were free to choose which activity they wanted to focus on. We were particularly interested in which design mechanisms students employed to support these activities, and so to study pathways across the first 3 stages of the framework. In the end, we received 14 final design concepts targeting consumer technology from 8 different product categories, with productivity, business, and social networks being the most prevalent. In our DRS paper, we describe 3 of these design concepts in detail. And if you look at these examples, you can also see how we used the framework to analyze these design concepts. And each of these concepts also reflects one particular strategy for integrating positive activities into consumer technology. And we identified 3 different strategies, namely addition, enrichment, and transformation. Addition, or concepts that implemented the strategy. Addition added a self-contained feature to the consumer technology without changing the core functionality or the user experience of the technology otherwise. A specific example from the course was a student added a very small feature, a module to the online checkout of an online, or to the checkout page of an online shop that encouraged users to practice gratitude, so to be grateful of the conveniences that online shopping provides. Another strategy for integration was enrichment, and enrichments changed the core functionality or user experience of the technology to a larger extent. They rebuilt existing user flows in a positive way, so to also foster positive activities. One example from the course was enriching the video streaming functionality of Netflix by adding certain search functionalities and also social features to browse movies and reflect on movies based on personally relevant topics or even mental health topics, and to exchange thoughts with other users. The last strategy is transformation, and transformations change existing negative usage patterns into less negative or even positive ones. One example from the course was a student that redesigned the ranking algorithm of the news website Twitter, or X, to emphasize similarities between users instead of fostering polarization. We then analyzed the final design concepts with regard to these design mechanisms and which design mechanisms were incorporated. And so we are here now in the first stage of the framework, and we talk about the design mechanisms. And we found that the design concepts incorporated a broad variety of these design mechanisms, which you can see here on the screen. The line width of the rectangle around each mechanism represents how often it was employed by the design concepts. And we can see here that despite the seemingly limited scope of integrating positive activities as active designs into consumer technology, there were multiple options to do so. And that also implies that common behavior change techniques like those you can see here can support positive activities within consumer technology. We have created a coding scheme for these design mechanisms that we found, providing further details and also links to the literature. And if you're interested, you're free to download that coding scheme through this QR code. Then we were interested at which drivers of behavior were supported by the design concepts. And we found that a large proportion of the concepts lay a strong focus on motivating engagement in positive activities. And we thought that this was related to the specific design process that we encouraged the students to follow, which was focused on the impact of their designs, in our case, positive activities, and also thinking about the quality of the user interaction before even thinking about specific product properties or implementation details. And this is also an interesting finding because behavioral intervention technologies often focus more on cognitive and educational aspects of the behavior change process. And here we see if positive activities are integrated into consumer technologies with a specific goal to do so, the students can also put a lot of emphasis on the motivational aspects and emotional aspects of the behavior change process. The design process followed the vision and product design method by Van Dijk and Hackert, which you can see in the upper right corner. This process is effect-driven, so focuses on the impact of the design and emphasizes reflection on the quality of the user interaction. For the course, the design task consisted of 4 steps. In the first step, students picked a positive activity to focus on. In the next step, they picked an existing technology to integrate that positive activity into. Next, in step 3, they needed to choose effective design mechanisms to support that positive activity. And in the last step, they needed to think about specific implementation details of these design mechanisms, especially reflecting about how these implementations would make the user feel. And we anticipated challenges along each of these steps of the design process. So in step 1, the challenge was from our perspective, how to acquire theoretical knowledge from well-being research, a domain or discipline that design students were not familiar with, and specifically to identify aspects from this theoretical knowledge, so about positive activities that they think they can target by design. In the next step, they need to use this knowledge and integrate it into a fitting technology context. So here it is really about finding the right technology that provides the right environment to practice the chosen activity in this context. The challenge in step 3 is then to select suitable design mechanisms and specifically to integrate these mechanisms into the existing user interface. So because the activity is integrated into existing technologies and the students didn't build a dedicated well-being application, they needed to work with what was there in the chosen technology, with the existing functionality, the existing user flows, and to see how they can fit the activity in and how they can implement design mechanisms so that they merge with the existing user interface. Throughout the course, we observed how students addressed each of these challenges, and in short, steps 1, 3, and 4 were totally fine. Students enjoyed designing for positive activities. They were also able to select and implement effective design mechanisms. But the biggest challenge, and students struggled with this quite a lot, was to pick the right technology to integrate the positive activity into. So they acquired knowledge about, let's say, practicing gratitude, but then they couldn't think of a fitting technology context in which practicing gratitude would be relevant. So we believe that future work should focus on contextualizing positive activities for different types of consumer technology, so to point designers in the right direction to say which positive activities could be relevant in which contexts. And we already did some steps in this direction. We analyzed some of the most common consumer technologies with regard to which positive activities are currently supported in these consumer technologies through which design mechanisms, and to map positive activities to certain technology branches. We then took insights from this study to enrich a digital design tool that we are currently still working on to translate the framework into a more practical design application. So one part of this tool is to really translate the first 3 stages of the framework in some kind of a mind mapping activity where designers can map specific implementations of product properties that they are thinking about, and link these implementations to other stages of the framework, like design mechanisms, drivers of behavior, and ultimately the positive activity. So this is a tool that helps more with the later stages of the design process with a specific implementation. And the tool also features a library of technology examples that we have collected throughout our research. And those are examples of existing technologies that we have analyzed through the lens of our theoretical framework. And these examples can help make the framework more tangible to designers and also inspire future solutions based on positive activities. So to conclude, through our research, we have demonstrated that well-being can be supported even through small features in consumer technology, and it does not always require large-scale interventions, and integrating well-being enhancing activities seamlessly into these technologies may lower the threshold for engagement and maximize their reach. And lastly, the design process benefits from a focus on the outcomes of the design project, positive activities, and the quality of the interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for this great presentation. We are moving on to the second presentation, which explores another aspect of well-being in daily life. So I'm going to invite Petra Salaric to deliver this presentation. Petra is an entrepreneur and a doctoral researcher at the School of Design and Creative Arts at Loughborough University. Within the area of design for well-being, she focuses on behavior change and emotions and specializes in taboo topics. Excited to see your presentation, Petra. Please feel free to start whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Thank you, Leandro. Well, today I won't be speaking about taboos, but I hope it's nonetheless interesting. Also, hello, everyone, and I'm super happy to be here with you today and to have the opportunity to present our paper for the second time. And also, I will be apologizing to anyone who is annoyed by this view of Adobe Acrobat. I hope no one will be harmed by that. It's technical difficulties on my end. As well, do let me know. I've been having some issues in the house with the internet, so in case it goes away, do let me know. So I will be presenting on the behalf of myself and my supervisors, Rebecca Kane, Milena Zetkus, and Valentine Vish, the paper Tinder, I Don't Like This, Identifying Desired User Interaction Qualities to Support Intimacy Building in the Online Environment. And following as well Lisa's presentation on the interfaces, I will be trying to shed a light on the importance of the design of online communication, as well as the role of design in enhancing well-being, specifically on the focus of romantic relationships. And I would like to start my presentation by sharing with you a bit of a story. So imagine that it is a Saturday morning, and Alex is in the UK, and as it goes, he's drinking his tea, and he has downloaded a dating application with the hope of finding a romantic partner, where he encounters Sarah. And at this moment, my research starts to come in and questioning how does their interaction go forward. So how does Alex perceive Sarah based on the design of the dating app and the environment? How will he respond to Sarah? How will their communication progress? And how will the design of this environment influence their intimacy building? And what I will share with you is these 4 categories. So what do we know so far when it comes to dating apps and user experience and well-being, the research methods that we used, what we found out, and some further recommendations. What do we know so far is that dating app is a huge industry. It is becoming one of the most financially fictitious industries with $8 billion and over 1,500 dating apps and growing with time. And here we have about 400 million users and prediction of 450 million users by 2028. And while dating apps have actually democratized romantic relationships and access for people to find themselves a romantic partner, there is also a lot of worries that they have brought as well. Such as Pew Research Center has conducted a survey in the US with over 6,000 respondents, and they have identified that even 42% have had negative experiences. Many papers also reporting bullying, racism, body shaming, slut shaming, as well as the rise of negative behaviors that have been generated through the use of dating apps, such as ghosting, catfishing, orbiting, etc. And this has created a general issue of trust and as well as a fear of safety within the online spaces. But also it has brought the question of the success of the aim of dating apps in actually getting people together, because the same survey found that even 75 respondents found it very difficult to find partners than it was a previous year, and even 47% stated it was more difficult than it was 10 years ago. As well, the overly pictorial design of dating apps and a very small amount of information that is requested and shared was reporting to bring superficial connections. However, the very concerning aspect is the lowering of well-being with the rise of anxiety, distress, lower self-image, and a lowering of confidence. And another survey with around 430 respondents have found higher levels of depression, anxiety, and distress for those who have used a dating app daily, a swipe-based dating app daily, or more than a year. And now there are researchers that state that dating apps are simply mediators and that the behaviors that people have over dating apps are only replicating those that we have in our face-to-face communication. But it was shown that dating apps are actually dating interventions that change user behavior and thus have a consequential effect on the way people build relationships and how they go about their relationships. Some of the previous research that was done and presented in the last DRS of 2022 was an autoethnographic research which captures and follows the experience I had over 4 different dating apps. And as you can see, there's a lot of oscillations and some that have been shorter. And what was captured that even within 45 minutes, so this timeline visualizes the experiences that were captured with using different elements of dating apps. And you can see many oscillations, but you can see also how those that were predominantly negative were also the shortest of experiences. What was also found that dating apps do control the emotional state of the user. They also influence the way that the user can feel about themselves and has a consequential effect on how the connections are made with others. Further research that was done has identified, this was a scoping review that has collected research from different disciplines such as perception, psychology, also communications. And what has been identified are those that bring distrust and disengagement, which then leads to the loss of the connection, and also how we can ensure trust and engagement between users in order to actually lead to intimacy building. And what I'm presenting today is the step of trying to identify the desired interaction quality so that we can create the outcome of the PhD research was a framework and toolkit to guide designers in how to actually create online communication designs so that we can support intimacy building. But the step that was necessary to do that was to identify not just what is the current state within dating apps, but also how users want to feel when they're building intimacy so that we can support that interaction. So that was the research objective number 2. And the research objective number 1 was also to identify whether the current definition of intimacy is still covering today's experiences as they were created prior to the World Wide Web, and of course prior to the creation of the dating apps that have only emerged in the last decade. So the research method and plan that was used was an online descriptive questionnaire, which was formed with a mix of closed, multi-choice, and open questions in order to assess attitudes, values, beliefs, and also motives of users to use different services and their beliefs over the abilities to build intimacy online. Choosing the online option for the self-completion questionnaire allowed a large pool of data so that we can identify the definition of intimacy, but also it was, of course, a more short span of time than other methods. The questionnaire was constructed. It was piloted, and so what we have also added were the supporting images on the right to support recall of the experiences, and also included word definitions such as what are interaction features, what are all of the dating apps, and we have also tested and with experts to use the best existing measurement tools for intimacy. And sensitive research was as well taken into an account because of the previously mentioned negative experiences. And this was included in the way that we ordered questions by leading the more intimate questions in the end, also grouping questions to support understanding and to avoid fatigue of answering, but also using a more day-to-day language to allow ease and to make it more of an intimate and personal experience. The inclusion criteria was not as strict. It was mostly concerning the usage of dating apps within the last 2 years, because dating apps tend to update and make changes within their system, and therefore, if we used a bit longer span, it would not be as applicable as it is today. As I mentioned, the internet self-completion study, snowball method was used predominantly because of the online services, and in vivo was used for thematic analysis. What we found out, so we have received 100 participants from 24 nationalities across 5 continents with an equal proportion of female and male respondents. There was no identified differences based on the nationalities. The preferred method was WhatsApp, and then it was a dating application, and then third and fourth were Instagram and Facebook. No differences between genders here. The most element that respondents have ascribed to feeling of intimacy was the content of the written text and disclosure, and then it was emojis and visuals and sharing visual content. However, what was also found was the relevance, in fact, of the of the environment and of the interaction features, which points to show that, that the design can, in fact, influence the feeling of intimacy, which then also can influence in the way that the user feels. So highlighting the importance of the design in interaction features to achieve support of intimacy building. Also extremely relevant was that the main criteria to build intimacy is trust. However, this is the criteria that is quite hard to achieve in the online environment, pointing again to the existing findings. Here was the difference between genders, and that was on the aspect of safety. So it was found that safety is a higher issue for female users than it is for male, but trust is equally relevant for both. When it comes to the defining of intimacy of today, the response was predominantly close, an element of close, and then connected, and third, vulnerability, which correlates to the existing definition of Sternberg, which states that intimacy is a feeling of closeness or connectedness. When it comes to the desired interaction quality, what was interesting was found the elements of exciting, playful, and adventurous, and then comfortable, relaxed, and third is safe, which highlights the relevance that the interaction that we design needs to be exciting, playful, and adventurous in order to support intimacy. But also question is whether if we achieve that could also support in dealing with the issues of the lack of trust and the lack of safety, but this needs to be further tested. Now, why is this important? Because internet has become the main source for building intimacy today. This is the finding from Rosenfeld and colleagues, which was captured in 2017, but they are continuing with the research and the results are the same. Therefore, the space, if we are actually building relationships online, the space needs to be created to support it. But something that I haven't included in the paper, but I wanted to mention today, which I think is very relevant, is as well the issues of polarization that is happening in today's world, which is bringing people further away. I need to stress also my research was on heterosexual couples. So this is as well polarization mostly for heterosexual couples. But also there's a trend, especially in East Asia, where women are actually boycotting dating. I don't know what is the other term to say that. They're choosing to be single for the issues of the increase of conservative and patriarchal and traditional views in men. And of course, as I mentioned, we need trust in order to build intimacy, but as this research has shown and the previous research has shown as well, this is an increased issue in the online environment, thus inhibiting the ease of building intimacy online. And numerous research has shown the importance of romantic relationships, stable romantic relationships for the sake of health, longevity of life, disease recovery, immunity as well, and of course, the overall happiness of people. So how can we then actually ensure that the online interactions that we have are designed more mindfully for the sake of well-being of individuals and couples? I hope that this will go with my last paper. That is the outcome of my PhD. And some further recommendations is that we need more research in the space of design for relation making, especially when it comes to online relationships. There is a lot of research that has focused on haptic touch or keeping couples on a distance, but we need more on the focus of those early building stages of romantic relationships. Also, it would be great to understand the experiences of other age groups, as Carol Riff has shared in her work, that the importance of relationships changes based on our stages in life. This might actually correlate as well to the way that people use dating apps based on which stage they are in. We need also further research to identify whether the existing definition of intimacy of today is still intact, because what we haven't measured is the expression of affection, which is one of the three elements of intimacy, and whether the expression of affection, such as with sharing a post with a loved one, or liking a story, or commenting on a story, and this sort of slight behaviors that are happening online have to do as well with intimacy. And finally, the questionnaire that was built, as it has incorporated both the current trends of online behavior as well as the existing measurements of intimacy, can be used to further investigate the intimacy in the online space. And that is all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Petra, for your very interesting yet disturbing presentation. Discussing a third aspect of daily practices of young adults, connecting sustainable and well-being enhancing behaviors. So I'm gonna invite Michael Kowalski to deliver his presentation. Michael is a doctoral researcher in the Department of Human-Centered Design at Cornell University, and he's also an instructor of design at Syracuse University. Michael's research seeks to empower designers through a greater understanding of the human dimension of more sustainable futures. And I also want to acknowledge that Yoon is also with us. Jay is Michael's co-author. He's an assistant professor in the same department at Cornell University, where he leads the Meta Design and Technology Lab. So the floor is yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Leandro. Thank you, and thank you to you, Sarah, the SIGWELL group, for organizing this. I think it'd be good to give one little minor correction, which is Jay is now associate professor at Cornell University as of a week ago. So it's a big milestone. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's great to hear some really interesting presentations and also get a little bit of a diversion from the news cycle and very eventful last 24 hours here in the United States. So this paper is Connecting Sustainable and Well-Being Enhancing Behaviors, Reflections Through Daily Practices of Young Adults. Some of the motivation for this research is both professional and personal. My background is in product design. I practiced professionally for more than 10 years before going to graduate school, working on mass-produced products. There's environmental and social implications with that, some of which are not always very positive. And also my interest in environmental sustainability. So if that's anything like me and you look at your news feed, you might see headlines like this: climate change is real and it's permanent. We just had Halloween here in the US about a week ago. This headline, 5 climate change facts to scare you into action this Halloween. So fear as a motivator for change in this space implied in that headline. And a connected phenomenon here, from my perspective: climate grief, eco-anxiety, and associated negative impacts on subjective well-being, psychological well-being associated with environmental challenges. A wide-ranging survey, international survey of young people, analyzing their thoughts on anxiety related to climate change. Nearly 60% said they felt very worried or extremely worried about it. More than 45% said the feelings about climate affected their daily lives. 3/4 said the future is frightening, and more than half think humanity is doomed. But 2/3 also reported, along with those negative emotions, a sense of hope. So the question there is this environmental crisis and sort of a partly connected mental health crisis, is there any room for a more positive direction between these concerns? So getting to the design side and the design research side, that means we're looking, broadly speaking, at design for sustainability. Here, this framework tracking the evolution of design related to sustainability from the 1990s to up to close to the present day. That starts with sort of product-centric focus down at the bottom left, things like efficiency and material selection, up to the socio-technical system level at the top right, which takes into account the complex systems of both technology and people and the way those can impact environmental sustainability. And then sort of parallel to that, the interest here is also, broadly speaking, related to design for subjective well-being. So here, the positive design framework from Pohlmeyer and Desmet. And part of the observation or the interest in this study was we've got rich and building research strands in these domains. There is some crossover among the two, but it feels like there's room for much more. And part of the concern here is if you're only focusing on one thing, such as design for sustainability, and your mechanisms that you're using are things such as fear, what are the negative implications for individuals' well-being there? And vice versa. For example, if you're working on design for pleasure, but ignoring some of the other outcomes that could come from kind of explicitly focusing on that, could there be negative environmental outcomes or other unintended consequences? So the research question motivating this was what factors contribute to the alignment or conflict between concerns of environmentally sustainable behavior and subjective well-being in daily activities of young adults, and ideally with relevance to design, research, and practice. So how we went about gathering data here was developing an experience sampling questionnaire with students in 2 elective courses that were focused on subjective well-being and environmental sustainability. The content of the questions was informed by social practice theory by Shub et al. And in this round of the research, it was almost entirely qualitative. We wanted to leave it open-ended in terms of what types of activities these young adults identified that they felt had connections to environmental sustainability and their well-being, and also leave it open-ended for them to describe what things, what factors were important in that relationship. So you can see the open-ended questions there. We also asked them sort of in the multiple choice question there, what was the relationship between these concerns? Was it positive for both? You had some environmentally sustainable behavior you felt good about it. Was there some kind of conflict? And if there was a conflict, did you choose to prioritize your well-being, or did you choose to prioritize sustainability? Or was it some unfortunate circumstance where both concerns worked out negatively? And to get into a little bit more detail, you can see this 2x2 image graph on the top right. We asked the students to place a mark on that graph where they felt the intensity of the influence on either sustainability or their well-being was placed. And so sort of a more detailed question than the multiple choice one to get a sense of the level of impact or influence there. So the first thing we did was look at what types of activities students reported on. We had more than 200 responses. Each student was asked to report once a day for 7 days. And we grouped these into broad categories of at-home routine type behaviors. There was a lot of food and drink behaviors reported, mobility also big, and then sort of a group of other routine activities that happened. Things like bathing, things like whether or not you used reusable or disposable food containers and utensils, the type of transportation you use. Interestingly, these are students on a campus where a large portion of their daily needs are met within walking distance, but you can see here, car was the most frequent type of transportation used, and bus, even though for most of these students was free, the least frequently used. So then looking at the basic descriptive statistics, again, 27 participants, 209 activities reported, looking at the distribution of, okay, you reported on something that had, a connection to sustainability and a connection to your well-being. How did that play out? One thing that was promising was these concerns appear to be able to get along a large percentage of the time. So the top number there at 38%, you had mutually positive outcomes for sustainable behavior and people's well-being. Looking down at the next 2 bars, though, if there was a conflict in the situation, the individuals had to make a choice, or these two concerns could not get along, you can see that subjective well-being was prioritized at 34% compared to the 15% for sustainable behavior. So your basic math there, it was more than twice as likely in a conflict scenario that well-being was prioritized. Interestingly, a shout out to my IND 275 students who are on the other side of this wall. We did a similar exercise to this survey earlier in this semester. The results here that are on the screen, these were students that self-selected into elective classes that focused on environmental sustainability and subjective well-being. So you could say there was sort of you would expect the participants in this survey here to be the most likely to behave sustainably if there was a conflict. And even given that, they did not do that at a rate of 2 to 1. Interestingly, in a broader sample where the focus was not on sustainability, that actually jumped to a level of about 6 to 1. So even for young people who surveys say are very concerned about the environment, when there is a conflict present, their well-being tends to be prioritized according to this survey data. So the next piece was that map we showed. Each person for each experience selected a dot on the map in terms of how high or how low that activity connected to these two concerns. And then when you put them together, we generated a heat map there. The main takeaway for me here, and we've run this survey, in chunks about 4 different times now. The overall pattern continues to hold, which is you get a majority of responses above the horizontal line there, suggesting people almost the large majority of the time are either neutral to positive in terms of emphasizing their well-being. On the sustainability side, we go fully sort of left to right, and you get sort of those low sustainability moments to more high sustainability moments. So moving from there, we went to a thematic analysis using Atlas TI, and we went through all the qualitative data in the survey responses. The goal there was to identify groups of factors that were important in terms of steering behavior in these experiences and connecting to well-being or sustainability. And we wound up getting to 6 themes or factors here. The first was the material world, products and spaces. These were the locations, both interior and exterior environments, where a lot of these activities occurred. The next was personal resources. These often dealt with individuals' time, their personal energy, money, and sometimes even skills. External resources, so things like fossil fuels or renewables. Also physical materials that go into a lot of the products that we use on a day-to-day basis. Another one was social influence, the way other people influence these activities. The time frame and scale, this was largely about how people thought about outcomes in the very near term versus sometimes delaying gratification or think about consequences for the long term. And also wants and preferences in terms of when people had options for certain activities, often think about what they felt was most desirable. So in the material world, we noticed 4 sort of different patterns that happened here. People often mentioned that the physical environment could either promote or hinder their sustainable behavior, and also promote or hinder their sense of subjective well-being. So an example quote here was an individual who had been doing their recycling in their room for a while, collecting their recyclables, and then going to transfer that to a larger bin in their dormitory on campus and not being able to find one. And so for them, they were attempting to act sustainably, but the design, the layout of the physical environment was actually making that more challenging. In the next theme or factor, we get into personal resources. So here we have time, energy, skills, money, mood. There was a range here of people feeling like their personal resources were efficiently used. For example, they did what they needed to do quickly. It didn't take a lot of time. It didn't take a lot of energy. It didn't take a lot of effort. down to a range of where experiences felt very demanding on them. We grouped skills, knowledge, mindfulness together here in meeting needs. This particular student used a reusable bag at the grocery store, and not only that, had upcycled a pair of pants into that bag. So using those skills to engage in a sustainable behavior is what led to a sort of dual positive outcomes here. The next category was external resources: fuel, electricity, water, physical materials. Here we have an example of somebody taking a shower. They said they felt amazing, refreshed. They took a very long shower, and they said they felt bad for wasting so much water, but mentally they really needed it. So they sort of internalized that conflict, but sort of the enjoyment in the moment was worth it for the environmental trade-off. And this gets to a little bit of an idea we presented in the paper, which is this resource balance. In a lot of the entries, people were actively working through sort of the costs or benefits to their personal resources versus costs or benefits to external resources. And an example here, I called my friend, we carpooled to run errands, and then they're thinking through this cost benefit. I thought that it was a very efficient alternative to the arguably more sustainable choice of walking. I thought about all the time and energy I was saving by catching the ride. So, you know, the very salient outcomes of time and energy for the individual prioritized over, you know, the emissions for that transportation method. The next factor we had was social influence. We noticed sort of two different pathways here. One was more of a bonding and sharing of resources that often enhanced experiences. And another was social and a sort of external social influence or norms. These could be either positive or negative, but it sort of depended what, you know, others in the vicinity or people who were important were thinking. So in this example, an individual said their friends were waiting for them to get a drink. They felt pressured because they could have used their Brita, which was more sustainable, and gotten water from that, but instead they purchased a plastic water bottle. They were going to an event, it was a movie night, and she didn't want to make them wait. She didn't know if they would be okay given that scenario. So given the expectations of the group, decided to go for the less sustainable choice, even though individually that was not their preference. And the final one was time frame and scale. This dealt with sort of thinking about the near term versus the far term implications, and also whether or not somebody thought the scale of their actions mattered or not. So on the top one, this person had a set of reusable utensils to use at the dorm, but they did not feel like washing them again after using them for dinner. So they grabbed a disposable set at the dining hall, and this person says, I chose the tiniest bit of personal want over another tiny bit of sustainability. We noticed a lot of times people would talk about, does the scale of this matter? It's only me, one person, it's only one time, doesn't matter. Versus the next person, they also said, I was feeling quite tired today, but I was happy to eat my leftover pasta from my ceramic bowl. It is more inconvenient and slightly tiring to wash my bowl than to toss out like a paper plate, but I'm glad that I made the sustainable choice. I also find happiness in taking care of the things that I own. So very similar scenarios. One individual went to the more sustainable way, the other not. We noticed a lot of times where that sort of margin of what pushed somebody to one side or the other, there were some small details on what made those decisions. And also, sorry, the last one here, wants and preferences. When options are available, and sometimes tempting options. This person had food in their room, food that they could have already used, they had already purchased. They saw a food truck that made delicious food, also generated a lot of waste for them. You know, sort of that temptation, that want, that preference was enough to overpower even the concern that there was more physical waste generated from that. So the next thing we did was we took these factors and we went through all the responses, and we assigned the factors per response to the extent that it seemed like any given factor meaningfully influenced the decision-making and behavior in a given experience. For a lot of experiences, people talked in detail about all the things that were going on in their mind, what they might choose to do. We tried to apply the ones that seemed to most significantly influence behavior and tag those per response. And then we lined them up to the conditions of how did this work relative to these two concerns. So you can see there's obviously different distributions here of where these factors land. For example, when sustainable outcomes and well-being are both positive, the physical environment was very big. That's 71% and 60% at the top left. These were positive environments that enabled sustainable behavior more readily and well-being more readily. You'll also see, for example, the personal resources support meeting needs at 38%. These could be things like skills or time or energy, for example, cooking a meal instead of getting takeout and the waste associated with that being important there. In the sustainable behavior side, you see that 61% number. That was that minor demand to enact a sustainable behavior. There was a lot of instances where the ask on a person of time, effort, energy wasn't too big. People noted it. You can see down below, it says there was some initial hesitancy, but they overcame that to do the more sustainable behavior. And then on the well-being side, you'll notice the environment does not promote sustainable behavior. That cell is 0. It does promote well-being, and actually there's some challenges in the environment, such as not being able to find the recycling bin, that just make those behaviors more difficult. So jumping forward, we also looked at emotions. Emotions and affect balance as an important part of well-being. And again, per condition here, you'll notice when both things were positive, the biggest cell there is that people felt happy. And we tagged every single emotion that people referenced in their open-ended questions. And these were the most popular here. All positive emotions as the most common. You can see on sustainable behavior prioritized, we got a split between positive and negative emotions, and annoyance and frustration creeping in, again, usually because of the ask of extra time or effort or energy to enact those behaviors. Interestingly, for me, on the well-being prioritized side, you get a lot of positive emotions, but you also land guilt down there at the bottom as the only negative emotion at an equal amount as happy. Thinking back to the opening slides, the idea of guilt or fear as a motivator to increase more environmentally sustainable behavior, what we're seeing in these survey results, or at least what this implies, is guilt was not motivating people to behave more sustainably. If anything, it was just an after effect of them realizing they did not act sustainably. And then on the both negative side, we see all negative emotional outcomes there. So then we started thinking about how do we start to make sense of this more holistically? How could this start to apply to design? One thing we noticed in a lot of the responses where we had strong positive outcomes for well-being and sustainability was the social component of people having fun and engaging experiences with friends and those nearby. And in doing so, using resources more efficiently, sharing rides, sharing meals, different ways that the resource use per person could be reduced, but also be more enjoyable. So for example, if the goal is to get somewhere by car by myself, I'm only addressing my needs, but I'm using gasoline and other materials sort of from the global pool. Could you steer that down to meeting multiple people's needs with the collective resources we already have, with ideas like shared ownership and benefits of cohesion, freedom, agency, etc. So then we got into a couple themes here from the data. The first was designed for overcoming the initial hurdle, helping individuals overcome modest demands on their personal resources. And so this person, they talked about taking a walk as opposed to taking an Uber, so very different environmental outcomes there. They did not feel like doing this at first. They were tired. They also did not want to spend money, but their friend encouraged them to do this. And in the end, they felt good through the exercise, the social interaction, and the positive outcome there. But again, it was this small initial hurdle that they needed some outside influence to get to that decision. The next was design for sharing resources. This person was talking about water usage during laundry, and their roommate and they decided to combine their loads into one machine. Happy about saving money, happy about saving water. Again, it was a scenario where two people combining their efforts had positive outcomes for themselves, but also a positive environmental outcome. And the last one we have here is design for the happy coincidence, promoting sustainability by having it come second. So this response, this person went carpooling to the mall with their friend. They were driving together instead of alone, so better for the environment, and more time to hang out, talk, listen to music. That social interaction made this person happy. Also, it was a relief not having to drive alone and waste gas. And this last line, I would have opted to carpool even if sustainability wasn't a concern. So again, seeing how much people tend to prioritize their sustainability, are there times where that is the route is taken, but you can pull in the sustainable benefit secondary along with that. So then this is a little bit of a newer ongoing effort. The idea is, could you translate some of these either themes or ideas into specific activities people mentioned? Again, that idea of, do I use my reusable utensils, but it's a pain to wash those after, or it's just easier to throw out the disposable ones? Can you bring in hedonic or more, happy, joy-filled moments for some of these more mundane daily activities to get more positive outcomes? This one was looking at people who mentioned going grocery shopping, sometimes forgetting their reusable bag, but also sometimes being overwhelmed by, what do I buy? What's healthy? What should I cook? Could you have a physical object such as a grocery bag be more interactive, gamified, and making purchasing food and cooking yourself more enjoyable, and thereby eliminating the waste of takeout and all the packaging that comes with that? And the final one we have here is called meditating, not waiting. People did not take the bus as often, even though it was free and readily available. And a lot of that was around the frustration of waiting. But all these people, myself included, also lead extremely busy lives, and it can be very hard to find moments in your day to slow down, relax, and catch your breath. Could you reframe an activity, both psychologically and with the physical infrastructure, to make some of these moments more enjoyable for people? And one of the quotes there that helped inspire this was, I enjoy riding a bus and looking out the window while listening to music. I can relax and be out of the zone for the entire journey to the grocery market. So try to embrace that experience. And I like some of the AI generated output here. Some of it seemed like it made sense, but luckily humans are still involved and our buses are not driving on water or coming out of strange structures on the highway right at the people meditating. And that is what I have for this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, and congrats for this really interesting presentation. So I promised that I would go back to questions, and what we did here was to group these questions to see cross-cutting themes. And the first one is related to how you all navigated research and design methods. So I'll bring the specific questions about this topic to each one of you. I'll go back and start with Lisa. So the question is, would you consider a continuation of this research with a co-design approach? And some participants are wondering if the concepts you presented would bring potential money making opportunities for businesses. So basically, would you engage with industry, and would they see the potential to?
Yeah. So I should say that the main goal of my PhD project is to create tools and insights for industry. That is because I have a background in industry as well. So I really wanted to create something that will have an impact on this industry practice. So yeah, the tool should be made available to everyone, academic researchers and design practitioners. I saw the question also, if it is available already, not yet. It will be available in a month from now. So I am happy to share it with this group through whatever channel. Happy to. Co-design between students and industry professionals would be very interesting to see how this works out. Like one aspect about our research was that the students that we worked with, they were so enthusiastic about designing for well-being. They had no hesitation, maybe also based on the specific curriculum at TU Delft. So the students didn't doubt that it is possible to design for well-being, and they were kind of engaged and motivated to do so. With industry professionals, I would expect more of a hesitation. Can that really work? Especially that is also based on my own experience working with industry professionals. If you use the word well-being, then it's a very abstract term and they don't see the direct relation to their technologies. Once you break it down into more like granular aspects of well-being, it becomes more relevant. And I think they would get better on board, or would be more on board if they would be included in a co-creation workshop. I would think that there would be more feasibility concerns coming up and maybe affecting the outcome of the design activity that we didn't see with the students. The whole work, also the design tool, needs to be validated with industry practitioners, and this is all hopefully going to come in the future. And yeah, thank you for the very interesting questions, very relevant.
Petra, there are questions also around methods, because that's our topic here, asking basically about your choice of methods. Would you consider observing someone actively using a dating app to get real-time feedback, and why surveys?
Yeah. Well, since experience sampling is my favorite method, that was something that I wanted to do for a few months, and as well creating the outcome design ideas that happened through the later research, which was on new ideas. So it was the plan was to sort of test the existing experiences with something that we identified as better. However, due to, of course, time limitations of the PhD, and since the outcome focus was to have the effect on users, the plan was to actually bring those ideas towards designers and the industry. And since it took some time to actually make that working relationship, that is why it has not yet been to follow, but it definitely would be something to actually assess the long-term impact and sustainable impact on changes of behavior. So however, for the purposes of actually identifying the desired interaction quality, which is the paper that is presented here, I believe that for that purpose, the questionnaire was truly fitting, because it was sort of to assess the desired emotions. So for that, the direct contact over time with participants was not necessary. It was absolutely possible, and especially to identify and make that statement over we needed more people, and that is the easiest and most time useful was to use a questionnaire for that.
And also there's a kind of follow-up question. How does your study with the methods that you chose captured cultural influence differences?
Yeah, that's a great question because culture definitely plays a role. Interestingly, within this questionnaire, we have not identified any differences, which actually show how intimacy and relationships and belonging is a human fundamental need, and it is not something that is different, and online experiences are not as different based on for this purpose is not do not differ based on culture. However, the previous paper, which is a scoping review, has identified the differences in culture, specifically when it comes to humor, which tends to lead to miscommunication, which then ends up with disengagement with people and not taking off of a relationship, as well as wording and color preferences. So that definitely shows as to how different cultures have that. There has been some research on this conducted in East Asian countries, and specifically with the choice of red color, and that can be found in the paper that is published, which is a scoping review. Yeah.
Thank you, Petra.
Welcome.
We also have a question around methods and the use of questionnaires for Michael, which is during the analysis of data collection with participants, how did you guide the process of self-reflection? So people are wondering if it's so subjective, like how was it for you to develop the data collection tool?
Yeah, thank you for that. And so at least the responses reported here, we've been trying this, over stages here and learning as we go. It was very qualitative, as we talked about, very open-ended. Part of that was we're sort of at a pretty exploratory stage in terms of this research question, which to a certain extent is like, okay, we've got these big ideas of sustainability and well-being. Where do these hit with one another, interact with one another on a day-to-day basis? What kind of activities? Do they get along at all? Do they get along some? So, we were sort of, kind of big exploratory question type there. The experience sampling method, that, we wanted to see whatever anybody put out in front of us and thought was relevant in terms of making sense of the data from there. Part of this was, the students served as participants and also as interactive introspectors as part of the coursework. So that involved some level of analysis as part of the course in groups of the students as well. Part of the goal there was learning about, design for sustainability, design for subjective well-being, and also learning about qualitative data analysis. So there's some learning objectives built in, and along with that, getting multiple points of view in terms of, okay, what factors are actually happening here, what's important, how are they interacting, to get multiple eyes on it and multiple ideas, and then ultimately discussing through those in lengthy class sessions to try and make sense of it together.
Thank you. As expected, we will not have time to discuss all questions, so I encourage everyone to reach out to the presenters and ask their specific questions. What we heard today is basically how impactful design can be to support everyday behaviors, spanning from consumer products, like discussed in the first presentation, and how designers can actively support changing behaviors. I think it's really interesting to see how we moved from individual to creating relationships and sustainable behaviors. This was one of the main insights that I can tell you that we could draw from 21 presentations in the DRS. So how strong of a shift it was for us to see, instead of focusing on negative aspects of human life, to finally abandon a little bit the approach, our approach to problem solving, and actually try to support a better living. So I would like to invite everyone to read, of course, download and read their papers. Like to use this final couple of minutes to give the presenters the space to say some final words. And
I would just like to thank you, everyone, for listening and for taking interest in our research, for asking questions. Yeah, if you have further questions, then please reach out to me or to my colleagues. I'm really happy to connect on these topics. And thank you also for the other two presentations. Very interesting.
Yeah, I would like to follow the same as Lisa. Thank you very much, Leandra, for reaching out and for the opportunity to share this, and for everyone being here and listening to our presentations. And likewise, my LinkedIn, my email is open. If anyone has any further questions or would like to connect, I would very, very gladly answer or support in whatever way I can. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Petra and Lisa, for the presentations. The class I'm currently teaching with the students on the other side of that wall is a qualitative research methods class, partly about translating insights into design solutions for well-being. So Petra and Lisa, seeing your work here too, you know, how does some of the design research translate into tangible experiences for people, I think was great timing. So Leandro, coincidentally, thank you for the perfect timing in that, because that's the stage we're at in the semester with that course. And I'd love to connect with anybody and everybody on here. And thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much.
On point.
Presenters, co-authors, participants. It has been a privilege and a joy to see these presentations. So thank you so much, and I will see you in our next seminar.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.